Fall arrest systems, you have to be 100% right all the time, and there's no room for error. We have to get out and ensure that this employee can physically demonstrate the functionality of the equipment. The employee needs to inspect the harness every shift. The fit of a harness in the event that an incident occurs is vital to the performance of the system. If you look at an anchor point and it can't support your pickup truck, then it's not necessarily a good anchor point. The true path that we need to take is looking at the work scope, identifying the hazards, and taking corrective action to mitigate those hazards. It only take a couple minutes to go get your harness. You know, that at the end of the day, that can save your life.
Welcome to another exciting mine safety training video. Fall protection standards and equipment are constantly being updated in the mining environment. Preventing serious injuries and even fatalities from falls continues to be a constant challenge. There are so many fall arrest and fall protection systems on the market, we could spend hours trying to cover them all. Also, because the mining environment, equipment, and layouts are so very different, it would be almost impossible in this video to instruct you on customized individual fall protection plans at your operation. So, we've chosen to examine general methods and requirements for fall protection training and program modernization in your facilities. We want to caution you that our video is not all-inclusive. No video can cover all of the items in competent training and fall protection program upgrading. We urge you to seek professional, competent training for the selection and use of fall protection equipment, as well as programs educating your employees. With that in mind, let's move ahead.
Mining and raw materials production facilities have numerous locations requiring the use of fall protection equipment and fall arrest systems. You can't afford to assume that employees automatically know how to use fall protection equipment and where anchor points should be.
When we assume that an employee knows how to use all aspects of a fall arrest system, from an inspection through the utilization of the system, and we have a mistake in that process, then there's no recourse. We're going to have a fall and we're going to have a serious incident.
The use of competent supervisors who have been professionally trained is a vital component in creating fall protection programs, the training of employees, and the day-to-day use of those programs.
The ANSI Z359.2 standard specifies that you develop a fall protection program in which there is a program administrator, competent persons, competent rescuers, authorized persons, and authorized rescuers. Program administrators should be trained and retrained at least every 24 months in the development, implementation, and monitoring of the ongoing fall protection program. Competent persons and competent rescuers provide immediate supervision over employees and their training in the choosing of correct fall protection equipment, using of and installing of fall arrest systems, and correct rescue procedures. Authorized persons and authorized rescuers are employees who don't train other workers, but they actually use fall protection equipment and are trained in the inspection, maintenance, storage, care, and use of fall protection equipment and fall arrest systems. They are also trained to perform actual rescue procedures. One of the ongoing responsibilities of the program administrator should be to advise on, where possible, how to eliminate the need for fall arrest systems in the construction of new mining facilities or in upgrades to existing plants and equipment. Very simply, the program administrator should provide architectural and engineering suggestions on creating safe access and egress to work areas by the installation of platforms, stairs, walkways, and appropriate handrail systems.
Now let's cut to the chase. Actual training tools and procedures for your employees in a fall protection program.
Any truly effective training program for fall protection is going to use a majority of hands-on demonstrations in the selection and use of fall protection equipment and arrest systems.
A good idea is to have a checklist that as we go through the system and the employee successfully demonstrates a tie-off to a cable or a lifeline, or inspection of a scaffold ladder tag, or the safe utilization of a self-retractable lifeline and hook to the D-ring, we can check off that the employee successfully demonstrates that. And then the trainer signs off and the employee signs off, and thus we have a record of the employee's actual physical demonstration of successfully inspecting, donning the harness, and as well as a demonstration of its use.
A major component of hands-on training should be demonstrations of how to inspect three of the most common pieces of fall protection equipment, which are the body harness, the lanyard, and self-retracting lifeline. Employees must be taught to make these inspections every single time before putting the equipment on and or using it.
We need to look at the conditions of the webbing, the straps. We need to look at the conditions of the buckles and how they're arranged. We need to inspect the D-rings on the harnesses to ensure that they're adequate and they're not bent or damaged or cracked. And the lanyards to make sure that the shock absorbers have not been engaged, and also the condition of the webbing on the lanyards.
Start with the webbing. Grab it 6 to 8 inches apart. Bend it in a U shape. There must be no damaged fibers or cuts. Examine D-rings and back pads. The D-ring should pivot freely. There should be no distortion, breaks, or rough and sharp edges. Move to the buckle attachment. Is there any unusual wear, frayed, or cut fibers, or broken stitching? Next is the tongue and grommets. Are there loose, distorted, or broken grommets? There should never be any handmade punched holes. Inspect the tongue buckle. It must be free of distortion. It should overlap the buckle frame, and there should be no sharp edges. Look at the friction and mating buckles. The outer and center bars must be straight. On quick connect buckles, the outer and center bars must be straight, and the dual tab release must be free of debris. Inspect snaps and hooks for cracks and corrosion. The keeper latch must fit properly, and the spring should close the latch firmly. The keeper lock must work correctly. Look at thimbles and ensure the eye of the splice is firmly seated. The thimbles must have no sharp edges or cracks. There can be no cuts or loose strands. For a web lanyard, there can be no cuts or breaks in the sides and no chemical or heat damage. Shock absorber packs must be examined to ensure that there are no burn holes, tears, loose stitching, or rips. Shock-absorbing lanyards must be checked to ensure there has been no fall use or deployment. If there has, throw it out. Check the housing for the unit. Are there any loose fasteners, bent, cracked, or damaged parts? Examine the lifeline. Test the tension by pulling out several feet of the lifeline and allowing it to retract with light tension. Does the lifeline pull out and retract freely? Are there any cuts, burns, corrosion, kinks, or frays in the line? Inspect the braking mechanism. Grasp the lifeline above the impact indicator and apply a sharp, steady pull to engage the brakes. There must be no slippage of the lifeline with the brakes engaged. Do not use the unit if the braking mechanism doesn't engage properly. The one absolute rule during inspection of any fall protection equipment is this: when in doubt, don't use it, no matter what the problem. In addition to inspections, you should demonstrate hands-on training in selecting a full body harness, properly putting it on, and adjusting it. Keep in mind that workers are much more likely to constantly use and wear full body harnesses if those harnesses are comfortable and they fit correctly. A note of caution here. Many manufacturers rely on universal sizing. This means the harness will fit the average size person. Shorter, lighter weight workers, in addition to taller, heavy-set workers, may indeed require custom-sized body harnesses.
If we have a harness, a large harness on a small person, and when it's bagged out, then from that standpoint, if a person does fall, there's a potential for the person to slip or fall out of the harness if it's not fitted correctly. So the fit of a harness in the event that an incident occurs is vital to the performance of the system.
There are 6 easy steps that could save a life when putting on and adjusting the body harness. Hold the harness by the back D-ring. Shake the harness to allow the straps to fall in place. If the chest, leg, and/or waist straps are buckled, release the straps and unbuckle. Slip the straps over the shoulders so the D-ring is located in the middle of the back between the shoulder blades. Pull the leg straps between the legs and connect them to the opposite end. If you're using a belted harness, connect the waist strap after you've connected the leg straps. The waist strap should be tight, but not binding. Connect the chest strap and position it in the mid-chest area. Tighten it to keep the shoulder straps taut. After all straps have been buckled, tighten all buckles so that the harness fits snugly but allows full range of movement. Remember, harness styles vary, so always refer to the instructions enclosed with the harness.
We've covered some of the basics for fall protection program development and the hands-on teaching of inspection techniques of the equipment. Let's turn now to actual methods for designing and using fall protection equipment on actual mining job sites.
Program administrators are advised to use a pre-task planning approach in teaching supervisors and their team members. They should be taught how to choose and to use fall protection equipment on each individual task, as well as plan for rescuing a worker who might fall. They should be taught 100% of the time to use dual lanyards attached to anchor points and harnesses. These employees are receiving hands-on training in all of the responsibilities that are associated with the use of fall protection equipment and systems. Supervisors and workers should be trained to ask these 4 questions. What could go wrong? How serious an injury or incident can occur? How likely is this to happen? What equipment and methods do we use to prevent any of these things from happening? Program administrators should instruct and train supervisors and their team members to use a job hazard analysis for every task requiring fall protection equipment and methods.
In planning, we can identify those and we can implement safety systems or fall arrest systems in advance that are proper and engineered perhaps for the employee to safely use. And that's part of the JSA process, is identifying those particular hazards associated with the job scope and providing corrective action or corrective measures with respect to that.
The job hazard analysis contains 3 components. First, you must identify the basic job steps for the task ahead. Second, you must list the anticipated and potential hazards during the task. And third, you must itemize the methods for hazard control or elimination. Often in the mining environment, cement plants are located on mine property to use raw materials from the mine to produce cement. During a maintenance turnaround, when the kilns are not rotating and they've been shut down for days, a supervisor is going to conduct a hands-on training session in which employees must use fall protection. While the kiln is in a static position, the assignment will be to access the top of the kiln tires and make visual inspections for improper tire wear. The miners will use an aerial lift or man lift to access the top of the kiln and upper tire area. They will in turn attach lanyards to D-rings on full body harnesses, which they will wear for fall protection. The body harnesses will be secured to anchor points on the aerial lift. The team has made clear-cut decisions on anchor points, connectors, decelerators, and body harnesses. These are the 4 components of the personal fall arrest system to be used for this task. The supervisor uses a JHA form and has the workers join in. They write down the steps for the job. The first job step will be to check and make certain that a pre-shift inspection and safety check has been performed on the aerial lift during this shift and prior to use. Hazards could be overlooking a safety defect or operational defect that could pose a danger to the miners. Controlling the hazards will be a thorough pre-shift inspection. The second job step will be to eliminate electrical and mechanical contact with power sources and the movement of the kiln. The hazards would be electrical shock from power sources and/or crushing from kiln tire movement. Miners will control the hazards by de-energizing power and placing their locks and tags on power sources. They will then try out power to ensure no kiln movement. The third job step will be to inspect lanyards, hooks, connectors, and full body harnesses, and then correctly put them on. Potential hazards could be overlooking damages, weak spots, or improperly functioning fall protection equipment. They will control the hazards by performing correct and thorough equipment inspections and then properly putting on and connecting all gear. The team describes the fourth job step as accessing the top of the kiln by using the aerial lift. Hazards could include slips, trips, and falls as the men step into the lift or exit. They could also include falling out of the lift to the ground below if the men fail to properly tie off to the anchor points in the lift. The hazards will be controlled by watching where they step, either entering or leaving the lift, and actually attaching their lanyards to the anchor points in the lift. The fifth job step will be to inspect the tires for abnormal or irregular wear. Potential hazards include cuts or abrasions to hands and fingers, and possibly hitting a roof overhang near the kiln, which is a caught between or crushing hazard. The workers will protect their hands, and they will safely guide the lift basket under the roof overhang, preventing contact with it. The sixth job step will be to safely lower the aerial lift back to the ground. Hazards will include hitting the roof overhang and lowering the lift too quickly. Controls will include safe operation of the lift at the proper descent rate. Before the men begin the 6 job steps, the supervisor requires them to plan and describe a rescue plan in the event that one of them falls. The men use a radio to contact an aerial lift operator working at the opposite end of the cement plant. He tells them that he will be available to leave his job and come perform a rescue, transferring them to his lift if necessary. He estimates travel time to the kiln to be 5 minutes. The men instruct him to monitor his radio and to be on standby to come at once to the kiln tire area to perform a rescue. With the job hazard analysis and 6 job steps identified, hazards categorized, and controls spelled out, the men now go through all 6 steps and safely perform the kiln tire inspection and withdrawal. As a final training exercise, the supervisor instructs the workers on the dangers of suspension trauma in the event of a fall while wearing fall protection gear. He tells them, with the human body suspended in the air for several minutes, the blood can pool in the legs, deprive the brain of oxygen, and cause orthostatic intolerance or suspension trauma. The inactive leg muscles will use up the oxygen in the pooled blood and begin to burn fats to stay alive. During an improper rescue and incorrectly placing the victim in a totally horizontal position, the deoxygenated blood can flow back into the body, which is called reflow syndrome, and cause damage to the organs, the brain, and even cause the heart to stop beating. To combat suspension trauma, the supervisor instructs the miners to rescue the suspended worker as quickly as possible. Keep the worker sitting in an upright position with the legs out in front of him. Keep the victim calm and quiet, and monitor them constantly so they don't faint and fall into a horizontal position. Get immediate medical attention and advise medical personnel of suspension trauma and the reflow syndrome. As a closing thought, what might be the one simple goal to remember for fall protection?
To make sure that the employee adequately knows how to utilize the fall arrest equipment. That is a physical demonstration from the employee on the inspection process and also the utilization of the equipment in the actual work environment to make sure that they understand how to operate and utilize the equipment. So we have an identification, we have a planning of the equipment, and we have an understanding that the employee is thoroughly knowledgeable on utilization of the equipment.
We've taken a look today at fall protection training and program modernization. We've emphasized the practicing of hands-on training and continuous program modernization through program administrators and competent training supervisors. We urge you not to leave safety hanging. Remember, there's no job so important and no task so urgent that we can't take the time to perform our work safely. If it's not safe, don't do it, period. Until our next exciting mine safety training video, work safe.
During the making of this video, the operators of various mines have allowed the staging or the recreation of certain conditions which may at first appear to be unsafe and not according to certain federal, state, and/or company safety procedures. These scenes were created strictly to demonstrate the differences between correct and incorrect safety and work procedures in the mining environment. At times, incorrect procedures may have been intentionally left in the video sequences to allow mine safety instructors to ask, "What's wrong with this picture?" The conditions and stage scenes are in no way a true reflection of the condition or the operation of the mine shown in this video production. Finally, this video must be augmented by new MSHA rules and regulations that may be implemented at any time, in addition to changes in your company's safety rules and regulations that may be put into practice. This video training program does not purport to cover all federal, state, and/or your company's safety rules and regulations on the topics covered. For answers to any questions that you may have, consult with your supervisor or your company safety manager at once.